seat, grab a seat. In the time that we have together, I just want to ask a very simple question. Now, this is a question that has driven me for the last 25 years of my life. I'm 42 years old. And when I was 17, I had this revolutionary moment in my life. See, when I was growing up, life wasn't real good for me. My dad died when I was 4. My mom, who hadn't worked outside the home, went back to work. She began buying and selling real estate. We'd move into a house, we'd fix it up, and then we'd move out. When I moved into the house that I live in right now at age 38, it was the 28th move of my life. Went to 11 different schools over the course of my education, began to get angry and bitter because my dad had died when I was a little kid, began to get involved in drugs and alcohol, began to act up in the home, so much so that my mom, when I was 9 years old, put me in the car one day. We're driving down the road, and I said, "Where are we going?" She said, "Well, we're going to visit your Aunt Rochelle and your Uncle Paul." And I thought, okay, I like my Aunt Rochelle and my Uncle Paul, great. We're driving along a little bit further, and I said, "Mom, how long are we staying at Aunt Rochelle and Uncle Paul's?" And my mom said, "Well, I'm staying about 2 hours." Now at 9, you haven't perfected your deductive reasoning skills, but I kind of put 2 and 2 together, and I thought, I must be staying longer. "How long am I staying, Mom?" She said, "You're staying for about 2 years. See, the idea was send me to my Uncle Paul and my Aunt Rochelle, and they were going to whip me into shape. Emphasis on the whip. My Uncle Paul was a log truck driver, big, burly guy, 250 pounds, and missing half his teeth, big beard, big logger boots, and, the big red suspenders. And my Aunt Rochelle, her nickname, she was a school bus driver, and her nickname was Sarge. And she had about 50 pounds on my Uncle Paul. And then, right out of the chute, they had me eating broccoli and watching my P's and Q's and all the things that my mom had tried to get me to do. Long story short, that didn't work out. After about 18 months, they shipped me back. I was totally out of control. I used to spend many Wednesday afternoons going to the behavioral sciences clinic at the Children's Orthopedic Hospital in Seattle, just trying to figure out, why I was so angry and bitter and upset and challenged in school and all these kinds of things. Jumping forward, when I was 17 years old, I had a revolutionary moment in my life where all of a sudden I was about to graduate high school, and I realized I was going nowhere fast. I did poorly in school. I graduated, as Zig Ziglar would say, I graduated in the half of the class that made the top half possible. I was very, very low, and about a 2.0, something like that. But I realized I wanted to go somewhere, but I just didn't know where. I knew that I wanted success, and so for the last 25 years, from 17 to 42, one question has driven me, probably a question that's driven you. You may word it differently, but it's a very simple question. But the answer is pivotal in determining what kind of life we're going to live. Very simple question. What separates the successful from the unsuccessful? What separates the successful from... Why is it that some people succeed and other people don't succeed? Particularly here in America. See, in America, aren't we the land of the free and the home of the brave? You can do what you want, earn what you want, live where you want, marry who you want. Any type of thing that you want to do, you can go ahead and do it. That's the promise of America. And if that's true, that anybody can do it, but only some do it, then the question is, why is it that some do and some don't? Particularly when you realize that everybody essentially wants the same thing. Let me prove it to you. By a show of hands, let me ask a couple questions. How many of you would love to have $1 million in the bank? Right? Okay, perfect. Except those of you who have 10 million, you're like, why would I ever go back to $1 million, right? How many of you would love to have a lifelong loving relationship with your spouse? Very good, almost everybody. How many of you would like your children to grow up to be productive members of society? Everybody's hand goes up. How many of you would like to be healthy in old age and live a vibrant life until the day you died? So isn't it fascinating? Everybody wants the same thing, and we live in a country where anybody can have whatever it is that they want to have, and yet some people achieve it, some people don't. Now, this is particularly interesting to me here in America because there are people all around the world who live in countries. They're going to wake up tomorrow. Nearly 2 billion people will wake up tomorrow somewhere around the world. They'll be smart, they'll be talented, they'll have dreams, they'll be passionate, they'll be lovely, terrific, wonderful people, and they will not be able to ever live their dreams because they live in a country that's governed by a dictator or has a social caste system or doesn't believe in private property rights. all those things that control people that put a natural cap on people's ability to achieve what it is that they want to achieve. That makes that question for us today who live in a free society even more compelling. We don't live in a place that puts a cap on what we can achieve. We live in a country where we can do what we want, when we want, where we want, earn what we want, live where we want, all those kinds of things. And everybody says they want essentially the same thing, and yet some people do, some people don't. That's a fascinating question to me. And I've spent the last 25 years trying to figure out what is it that the successful people do? And why is it that they achieve something? Now, first of all, let me give you a parenthetical statement here. When I use the word success, I am not talking simply about financial success. Although that's our default definition of success, isn't it? Most people think about success, they think about it as financial, and I'll prove it to you. I'll ask you to say the first words that pop into your mind, and you just tell me the answer to this question. First words that pop in your mind, just say them out loud. Who's the most successful man in America? Bill Gates. Almost everybody everywhere. I've asked 100,000 people the same question. They all say Bill Gates. Follow-up question. Who's the most successful woman in America? And you all say Oprah. It's always the same. Everywhere I go, doesn't matter what corner of the country, whatever. Now, I take that back. Occasionally, it's always Bill Gates. But then occasionally I get a couple of other answers for who's the most successful woman. About 5% of the time somebody will say Hillary Clinton. And then my favorite answer of all time, I'll say who's the most successful man of America? Bill Gates. Who's the most successful woman in America? And somebody will say Mrs. Gates. That's my favorite answer. She did quite well for herself. But I'm not just talking about financial, although that's our default answer. But when we all step back from it for a moment and we say, okay, would I really trade my family for $5 million? Now, maybe some of you have a crazy brother-in-law. That doesn't really count. But you know, we're saying, no, I'd never trade my family. Nobody would trade their health for money or 10 years of their life. Or, you know, when you step back, all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, just piling up the most amount of money is not the most important thing. It's important, but when we truly define success, when we look at that word that stands for the magazine, success, and that's what I love about the people who are leading the magazine and the success movement, is it's not just about money. It's about lifestyle, it's about relationships, it's about health, it's about love, it's about kindness, it's about true success. Not the overachievement in one area, but the balanced achievement in all areas. And today I want to talk to you something a little counterintuitive perhaps than what you're generally used to hearing about. One of my favorite quotes of all time is a quote from Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson wrote in a letter to John Adams. He wrote a letter and said, in this letter, he said, there's a natural aristocracy among men, the grounds of which is virtue and talent. There's a natural aristocracy among men, the grounds of which is virtue and talent. Now let's put that into some context. In the old world, where the fathers of our country had come out of, there was also a natural aristocracy, wasn't there? The natural aristocracy in the old world, you were naturally raised to a level of aristocracy by what? Family. What family you were born into. Or you could marry into a family and become aristocracy. But the problem is you couldn't marry into a family of aristocracy unless what? You were born into a family of aristocracy. So they come to the New World and they say America's going to be different. See, in America, there's also a natural order of aristocracy. The people who succeed, the people who achieve, the people who fundamentally achieve the wealth and the success, the natural aristocracy in America, the grounds of which is virtue and talent, character and skills. Now, most of the time when we go to success seminars and we go to training at work and all these kinds of things, we learn about skills. And skills are important. We ought to learn skills. But today, I want to spend my time talking to you not about what to do, but about what to be. Because all the time I hear people say, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. I'm ready. Just tell me what to do. The problem is that what to do is undermined if you don't know what to be. If you don't understand the internal character development that has to take place in your life, the personal transformation. You can learn all the right to do things, and you'll never succeed because you'll be undermined, because the foundation will rot away and eventually it crumbles. We see it all the time. We see successful people in every industry, from politics to church to business, all across society. And what do we see? Highly skilled, talented people. I could drop name after name after name of people who had so much and they lost it, not because they weren't skilled, but because of the underlying lack of internal character. Character and who you are is the premise of your success. Do we need to learn what to do? Absolutely. But when you learn what to be, when you transform the internal, then it drives out the external. Then all the things that you've learned to do set upon the foundation of a successful life that gives you the ability to sustain and enjoy the success that you've achieved. You don't have to worry about losing it. You don't have to worry about it all crumbling apart because you have the internal strength to carry it on. So I want to talk to you about a number of internal character traits that I think are important for us, some of which you've heard before. But one of my favorite quotes of all time is G.K. Chesterton. He says we need to be reminded a lot more than we need to be instructed. And those of you who have teenagers, you know that they need to be reminded a lot more than they need to be instructed, right? I have 4 teenagers, 18, 17, 15, and 14. And I'm reminding them all the time, more so than I am instructing them. So let's talk about some of those things in the time that we have together. First one, in fact, I always tell people there's only one number one, and the rest of them you can kind of put in whatever order, but there's only one number one, and that's integrity. Integrity. Now, integrity is one of those words that we use all the time, and everybody, you know, they use it in language. I'm not so sure that anybody really knows what it means. See, integrity is one of those things that everybody thinks they have. You can go to any prison in America, walk down any cell block, pick any row, open any cell, and ask them if they have integrity. What are they going to say? Yep. Everybody thinks they have integrity, but they think everybody else lacks integrity, or other people lack integrity. See, that's a problem. In fact, how many of you, by a show of hands, have absolutely no integrity? Let me just see a show of hands. And no integrity whatsoever. I've asked 100,000 people that question. I've never had anybody go, yep, that's me, Mr. Lion, Cheating, Stealer guy. See, everybody thinks they have it. But business is broken down and we don't succeed sometimes because we lack integrity, and other people perceive us that way and they don't want to do business with us. They don't want to follow us. They don't want to buy us. So I'm going to give you something to think about as it relates to integrity. I want to look at the root word of integrity. Now, I was raised by a single mom who can do the New York Times Sunday morning crossword puzzle in 11 minutes. I've actually seen her do it. I've given her the puzzle. I've gone and made her a pot of coffee and come back and it's done. And I remember one time I said, for me, it takes me like 3 days with 3 friends to do the Sunday morning New York Times crossword puzzle. And I remember asking her one time, I said, how do you do it? And she said, well, it's simple once you understand the roots of words. So I've always loved the roots of words. And integrity is a really particularly fascinating one. I want you to go back to high school math. Go back all the way to high school math and think about a root word or a math term that shares the root word with the word integrity. And you know what the word is? Integer. Okay, that's the easy part. But now let me ask you, smarty pants, what is an integer? Anybody know? Whole number. Exactly, it's a whole number. Do you know that the root word of integrity simply means whole? To have integrity means to operate out of wholeness. Or if you put it another way, it means it's undivided. It means you operate out of a single set of morals, ethics, and values, not dual set of morals, ethics, and values. Because once you divide yourself and you operate out of different morals, ethics, and values in one spot and in another spot, all of a sudden people who are approaching you are thinking about buying from you, are thinking about following you or your leadership. Now all of a sudden they don't know which one of you to pick. Well, are you going to always act like this? Because sometimes I've seen you act like this, and what happens is all of a sudden they back off. You can have all the skills in the world, but if you don't have integrity, now all of a sudden people start backing up. I'll give you a good example of this. About 2 years ago, my wife asked me to go buy her a car. She'd been driving the minivan thing for, 112 years. And she said, can I just get a new car? I said, sure, we'll go get you a new car. So she said, I want SUV. So I narrowed it down, and she hates going and buying cars. So she said, you just pick it, whatever one, I'll love it. And I said, okay. I narrowed it down to 2 SUVs. And it was a Friday, and I'm one of these guys that goes back, and I go to the internet, and I check, and then I go back. And so I finally go back. It's a Friday. I'm going to buy on Saturday. And I said to the guy, I went in and talked to him, and he started giving me the runaround. In fact, the sales guy turned me over to the closer guy. You know the closer guy? The guy that's, what's it going to take to get you in the car today? And and they're lying to you and they're pounding you, and at one point he says, the average credit score of people who purchase from our car dealership is an 830. And I said, you mean a 630, right? He said, nope, it's an 830. And he just went one thing after another thing, and I thought, I don't like this lack of integrity. So I finally said, okay, I'm about to make my purchase choice tomorrow. Just give me bottom line, what's your bottom price so I can finally compare these things. He gave me a price. I said, perfect. And he said to me, I couldn't give you another $1 off if I wanted to. Perfect. Awesome. So I'm walking out to the car. I get halfway out to the car, and I hear this, hey, whoa, hey. And I turn around and look, and it's Closer Guy. And he comes running up to me, and I go, yes, and he gets up close, and you're about to get it when this happens. He goes, listen. If you buy the car today, I can give you another $1,000 off. And I just very politely said, sir, I don't think I can do business with you. And he said, why not? I said, because you have no integrity. And I just said it like that. I wasn't mad or anything, but I had clearly delineated that this person was not a person who was going to tell me the truth. And I said, you just told me a few minutes ago that you couldn't give me another $1 off if you wanted to. Now I'm halfway out to my car, and now you're telling me it's going to be another $1,000 off. Frankly, I'm wondering if I just move closer to the car, if I'll save some more money. But I said, the real problem here is that since I don't trust you, I can't trust the parts department. And if I can't trust you, I can't trust the sales department, I can't trust the service department, I can't trust the financing department. If I can't trust you, then it breaks down the trust for the rest of the organization. One of the earlier speakers was talking about, I think it was Darren earlier in the day, he said, people are really buying you. They're not buying your company, product, service. They're buying you. And if they don't believe you, if you don't have integrity, the whole system shuts down. Because ultimately, the relationship between leader and follower, between seller and buyer, is one of trust. One of the best things you can do when you leave this place today is look in the mirror and be honest with yourself and say, do I have integrity? Now, some of you might say, well, does that mean we're supposed to be perfect? Absolutely not. None of us are perfect. We've all broken our own moral code. We've all done things and said things we wish we wouldn't have done and said. But a true leader, a true successful person is one who recognizes it and rectifies it. They recognize that they made the mistake, and then they go back and they change it. They ask for forgiveness. They admit it to their team. They do whatever it takes to place themselves back into a place where they can be brought into the whole and they can present themselves as a person of wholeness rather than a person of division. Integrity is number one. Second thing is a positive, optimistic attitude. And again, another thing that people talk about, and we talk about positive, optimistic attitude, but I want to talk to you specifically about a particular thing that is important for us to understand inside the concept of a positive, optimistic attitude, and that's about the words that we use. Now, the words that we use, that we say to ourselves, we say to others, and others say to us. There's three ways that words affect us. The words we say to ourselves, the words we say to others, and the words that are said to us. And I like to talk about one of my favorite proverbs of all time, and it basically says this, that the tongue has the power of life and death. The tongue is the power of life and death. That is, that the words that we say to ourselves, the words that we say to others, and the words that we allow to be said to us either create life or they create death. Now, as a leader, as a person who wants to succeed, have you ever thought about the power of the words that you say to yourself, that you say to others, and that you allow to be said to you? There's an actual physical, chemical reaction that takes place in our minds and in the minds of other people when they hear words. Do you know that you can make an instantaneous physiological change in another human being's body simply by the words that you use? You can either breathe life or you can breathe death. And I'll give you a good example. I'll give you an example from marriage. Listen up, guys. What happens when you come home one day and you throw open the door and your wife's already gotten home and she's decided she's going to cook dinner for you, and you put down your briefcase and you notice that she's been to the hairstylist? And you look at her and you go, "What happened to your hair?" Now, she's not going to go, I'm going to become angry. I'm going to release the angry chemicals into my body, and eventually I'm going to throw a frying pan. No, it's instantaneous. She immediately has a reaction, and the flip side is true for us guys as well. You hear something, and it literally changes a chemical inside your body that either breathes life or it breathes death. Now, guys, let's give you a second chance. You've now been to the Success Symposium. You know better than that. You throw open the door, you put down your briefcase, you look up and you go, wow. Now, you know what's interesting about that is I look around, I see all these women who are smiling. You know, I'm looking at the back wall at the exit sign going, wow. And they're just happy that some imaginary sister's getting some love somewhere. They're like, woo. You know, guys, girls stick together in ways that guys don't. That's why they call it the yah-yah sisterhood, not the yah-yah brotherhood. You want to know how girls stick together? I love this. Guys, sometime this week coming up, call your spouse up and offer to buy some stuff at the store. You know, what do you need at the store? I'll stop by. And on your way home, stop and buy the things that she'd like you to buy, and then buy one of those packages of flowers. You know, the little prepackaged ones, $15 or whatever. And when you're walking out to the car, put everything in the cart except for the flowers and walk out like this, right? So you're walking out to the car. And there will inevitably be women who are walking into the store. Now, these women do not know you. They do not know your spouse. But you're going to be walking out, you're going to be carrying these things, and other women are going to be walking, and they're going to notice you, and they're going to do this. Oh. They're happy some sister's getting some flowers. Now, there will be some guys that will also see you. You know, they're getting out of their truck and they're going to look at you and go, I wonder what that guy did. They might even go, I'm with you, bro. But you come home and you throw open that door and you go, wow. I still do that to my wife. We've been married 20 years. She's heard me give this talk 1,000 times. We went to the Seattle Symphony a couple weeks ago and saw a violinist from the UK. She was in doing Vivaldi's Four Seasons. We're getting dressed, and what do you suppose I did? I walked into our big bathroom, and she was putting her makeup on. I walk in, and I go, wow. 20 years, 1,000 times. You think she said, I've heard that one before. No, she feels beautiful. The reverse is true. Girls, you could do this for your guys as well. You know, sometimes I wish my husband would be more of a leader. I wish he'd be stronger. I wish he'd be more confident. You can make him that way. Your words have the power of life and death. You want to build your husband up? Try this. Get home first, and when he comes through that door, you welcome him on the other side and say, welcome home, you red hot hunk of burning love. Now, what's going to happen? He's going to like throw open the door, and you're going to be, yeah, and first thing he's going to check the address, make sure he's got the right address. And then he's going to come in, and he's going to go, me? And you're going to be, that's right, Tiger. And what's he going to do? He's going to be all, yes, I am. You know what's going to happen tomorrow? He's coming home early. He's going to throw open the door. You're going to be gone, like taking the kids to school or something. He's going to run in the house going, honey, red hot hunk of burning love's home. But guys, when you throw open that door and you see your wife and you say, wow, you're beautiful, what's she going to do? She's going to be all, yes, I am. Got my hair done, I got my nails done, I got my toes done. Guys, this is not where you follow it up with, how much did that cost us? Because that's a deal killer right there. You know, a lot of times I tell people I have teenagers and they say, oh, teenagers. Because people think that teenagers don't want to be with their parents. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why I think that is. And it goes back to this thing of what we say to people. Now think about this. You think about kids. Now, we train kids from the very beginning. We're always giving them praise at the very beginning. It sort of tapers off over time. Think about that for a moment. When a kid is 1 year old, what are they learning to do? Walk, talk, and poop. They're learning to walk, talk, and poop, right? Anybody here potty train a kid? Okay, you know what it's like, right? You put them down that little plastic chair thing. You get in front of them and go, come on, you can do it. You're such a big girl. Yes, you are. Come on. All right, you can do it. Yes, you can. All right. And then what happens? You hear the sound and you go, woo, yes, all right, you're so good. And you pull out Snickers and M&Ms and you're like, feed. And they're thinking, bodily functions, I'm getting candy. This is easy. Now, I've noticed in the midst of my talk that a couple people have gotten up and they've walked out the door. For whatever reason. They may be going to use the restroom, probably so. But when they come back in, we don't meet them at the door and go, woo, big girl, good job, way to get him, Tiger. See, somewhere along the line, it tapers off. When they're little kids, we're praising them for bodily functions. When they're 6 years old, we're running alongside them by the bike saying, go get them, you can do it. When they're in 6th grade, we say, I'm very proud of you, son, for the grades. And by the time they're 16, we're saying, why can't you be like your sister? Why is your room a pigsty? Why'd you get another ticket? And it's no wonder they don't want to spend time with their parents. You can change yourself. That you raise positive, productive members of society by breathing life into them. Telling them how proud you are of them. I tell all my kids how proud I am. I've got one who always says, what for? She always wants to know, and then I got to give her the list. I tell my kids I love you. Do you know I love you? I know they know. Do you feel like I love you? Always trying to praise them. Tell them. We do a thing on their birthdays where everybody at the table has to go around and say what we like most about them. Always trying to build them up and breathe life. Doesn't mean that we're perfect, but when we make a mistake, we rectify it. Are you today talking first and foremost to yourself, telling yourself that you're good enough, that you can do it, that you have confidence, that you are a person who has talents and skills and can make something of yourself? Because those words play inside your mind. First and foremost, what you say to yourself. Secondly, what are you saying to other people? Is it attracting them? You go out into your business and you become a person of praise, I'll tell you what, people are going to want to be around you. Brings me to my third point. Consider other people's interests more important than your own. And I'll give you a quick story about how this works. My daughter, she was 14, she's 17 now. My daughter tripled her income with this principle. Consider other people's interests more important than your own. Reminds me of the old Zig Ziglar quote, you can have anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want out of life. But that's an internal change. That's a humility issue. That's a servant heart issue. What's happening to your heart? Are you humble? Are you willing to serve? That's a personal transformation that has to take place so that you consider other people's interests more important than your own. My daughter was working as a barista at age 14 in Washington State. You can start working at 14. She goes out and she gets this job. She's a coffee maker, and she's bringing home about 25 bucks a day in tips for about, 4 or 6 weeks, something like that. And then all of a sudden she starts bringing home about $75 a day in tips. And I'm thinking, that's pretty good for a 14-year-old girl. And this continues to happen, and she jumped from 25 to 75, and after about 4 or 5, 6 days, 7 days, when I realized it wasn't just, a certain one-off kind of thing, she's bringing home $75 a day, so I call her into my office. And I said, Hannah, come into my office. So Hannah comes in, she said, yeah, Dad. I said, Hannah, you're just selling coffee up there, right? And she said, oh yeah, Dad, I finally figured people out. 14 years old, she finally figured people out. I said, really, what is it? She said, I just realized that people just love to talk about themselves. All you have to do is ask them questions about themselves, and they subconsciously give you more money. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, I noticed the same people are coming in, and I used to just take their order, and I'd make the coffee, and I'd hand it to them, give them their change. She said, now I'm like, well, where do you work? What's your name? I see you around here. How long have you worked there? I see you're married. How long have you been married? What do you do for fun? I said, do you have any little kids? How did little Johnny's soccer game go? How did little Susie's t-ball game go? She said, now I just ask them. All I do is just let them talk about themselves, talk about themselves, talk about themselves. I consider their interests more important than my own, and I'm making the coffee. Now I turn around, I get their money, I put it in the till, I give them their change, and guess where it goes, Dad? Right in a tip jar. Tripled her income because she now considers other people's interests more important than her own. If you think about it, it's kind of pathetic. Here's this 14-year-old girl going, oh yeah, refrigeration design, tell me all about it, buddy. But what it shows us is how needy people are. As leaders in the world, we have an opportunity for people to show up on our doorsteps, and not only to help them build a business, but find a life. We get the opportunity to build into people's lives and change the world. Yes, make great incomes while we do it and build great businesses, but we get to make a mark on the world. It's amazing. Now, the last thing I want to share with you, it's topic of my next book. In fact, it's the follow-up. It's the sequel to 12 Pillars that Jim Rohn and I wrote together. We're now coming out with a new book in May called Above All Else. Imagine, if you would, Warren Buffett calls you up and says, "This is Warren Buffett, I want to take you out for lunch and talk finances with you." Would you take him up on that? Of course. And you're sitting there at lunch, and he's telling you, now one thing you're going to want to know is this, and another thing you want to know about that, and here's something about mutual funds, and here's something about stocks, and here's something about options, and you're just going to be taking notes, right? Now, at the end of lunch, it gets to the point where the little bill folder thing comes over, and he looks at you, and he says this, "Now, above all else," just picture that. What would you do? Here's Warren Buffett, the greatest investor of the 20th century. He says, "Now, above all else," you'd lean in. What? What above all else? The richest man to ever live, and considered the wisest man to ever live, was a king by the name of Solomon. He wrote most of the Proverbs in the book of Proverbs in the Bible. God asked him, "What would you like, wisdom or wealth?" And he said, "I'll take wisdom." And God said, "Since you chose wisdom, I'll give you both." His wealth made Bill Gates look like a pauper. Trillions of dollars of castles and wealth and land and you name it, wealthiest man to ever live. And he has one proverb, and he says, "Above all else, buy low, sell high." No, that's not what he says. And this goes to the point that I want to make. He says, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. If I can leave you with one message today that synopsizes integrity and positive attitude and all these things, is guard your heart. There's so many things out there that want to tear you down and rip you apart and steal your heart. But the wisest and richest man to ever live says, above all else, guard your heart. Why? Because it is the wellspring of life. Your skills that you're learning is not the wellspring of life. Your heart is the wellspring of life. And we all want success. But let me tell you this, that unless your heart is bigger than your success, it crumbles. If your success gets bigger than your heart, it crumbles. We see it every day on the news. It's these little child stars who become famous and they've got 10 or 20 or $30 million by the time they're 18. Next thing you know, they're snorting coke and running around and going into rehab. Why? It's not because they're bad people. It's that their success has gotten bigger than their heart. They don't have the capacity to handle it. So yes, pursue success, but above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Make sure that your heart is bigger than your success, and then if your heart gets bigger and bigger and bigger, your success can get bigger and bigger and bigger. And as the subtitle of the new book is, above all else, the single most important lesson for achieving, sustaining, and enjoying success. I believe that every single one of you is going to be able to succeed and achieve success. The question is, will you be able to sustain it and enjoy it? If you want to sustain success and enjoy success, the key is, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Jim Rohn has said for years and years, and he's been a great mentor to me and the opportunity to work with him. He said, you don't get to determine how long you live. You do get to determine how well you live. Some of us get 10 years, some of us get 30 years, some of us get 50 years, some of us get 70 years, and other people get 100 years or maybe even a little bit more than that. We don't get to determine how long we live. We only get to determine how well we live. My question to you today is this: will you guard your heart? Will you watch over your integrity? Will you commit to being a positive, optimistic person who speaks words of life first into your own life and then into the others' lives? Will you become a servant leader who goes out and considers other people's interests more important than their own? Will you guard your heart because it's the wellspring of life, so that you not only live long, which I hope you all do, but you live well and you achieve and you succeed and you make a difference and you make a mark and you leave the world better off than it was when you got here. And I know you will, and I continue to make that my charge as well. Thank you very, very much for allowing me to be here. Appreciate it. Thank you.